Okay, and I'm going to attendees.
And the first one should be somebody, Elizabeth Vidal,
Okay,
who is not here yet, is the 1 Bond Street person. I do have to.
there she is, Larissa.
Am I correct that we're only 5?
No, not this.
We're here.
Lisbeth Vidal is the person who is the presenter, according to this CB spreadsheet, for 1 Bond Street. She's not here yet.
I think we'll wait until 6:35. I just am puzzled why there's so many people missing. Mark, you didn't get any notice about people not attending, did you?
I did not.
Okay.
We scroll down here. To get more.
So hover over it, you do it, hover over a little higher up. And then roll the lower. So let's promote Susan. Okay, we need 5 of us. We have Chanel.
Yes.
Chanel, 2, 3, 4. We need 1 more. We need 1 more for quorum.
Okay. I think we'll go ahead. I can start the beginning, and
Okay.
we'll go forward and do it the way we do without a quorum if anyone else appears.
Okay. If I may interrupt,
While we're in order in the room there, yes.
What is the quorum? For
5.
I thought that there are certain people that are allowed to be counted as quorum if they.
Can we start now?
We're just not.
I think
Um,
others don't count towards points.
This is Community Board 2 Manhattan Landmarks Committee meeting. It is the second of 2 meetings this month. And we have, I believe, 3 applications to consider. We worked out a system that seems to be satisfactory for doing a hybrid meeting, and we'll follow that same procedure tonight. The presenters will be online, and the excuse me. And there are certain members of the committee online and certain ones are in the room. In the presentations, for those doing the presenting, we want to ensure that background is useful, but be sure that it just has to do with the application at hand, and particularly the immediate neighborhood. Likewise, any examples that are given should be from as close as possible to the subject property. And it's useful to know whether these are examples that predated designation or whether they were after designation. And if after the designation, is it assured that they were approved by the commission? Following the presentations, we'll have questions and comments by the board members of the committee and then board members who are not on the committee, invited guests, and members of the public. The members of the public each are allotted 2 minutes to speak, and please ensure that your testimony is specifically on the application at hand, and in the case where there are other interested items about the same address, that they are addressed to the community board office so that we're only dealing with what's presented by the applicant this evening. In the business session following the public session, the applications will be considered and resolutions formed. Anyone is invited to stay, but only members of the committee and the board may speak at that meeting. Any questions? The first application is number 1 Bond Street to replace windows on the alley side of the building and install additional transom windows. So when it's ready, Susan will begin.
Well, as of a moment ago, the presenter for 1 Bond had not joined the meeting.
Okay, is
Is
the
there any-
presenter for
is there-
Perry Street here?
Yes, David Mansfield, who's presenting for Perry Street, is here. So David, I'm going to promote you. We have 2. David, I'm trying to promote you. Is there a problem? Oh, no, there isn't. Okay.
Is there?
And is there anyone else that needs to be included?
Does not appear to be. All right, David, we don't see you.
By being on the Apollo 13. Communicate ground control.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, David, but we can't see you.
I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's, give me 1 second and it says my video is working, but, there we are. I'm sorry about that. I had the little cover on I'm a little bit bright, but, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and thank you for promoting me. I'm not sure if I'm going to be sharing screen or if you're going to be, but I can share my screen if that's the best way to do it.
Thank you, David. The applicant shares. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I do have it ready and hopefully you can see this. I'm going to go to start.
Oh, sorry. I can't go direction.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, and with so many things on the page, if there's something that we need to see detail, if you could enlarge it.
I will try to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, so.
Yep. So number 36 Perry Street. It's part of a row of 6 Greek Revival townhouses in Perry Street. The subject property is these 2 red dashed lines here. If I can zoom in a little bit. The property is, let me just
Interrupt, but if you could go to view and then select full screen, that would be a big help.
absolutely.
There you go, full screen mode, there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our project mainly entails, if you haven't reviewed it, it's removal of an existing skylight, which is kind of a dormer skylight. You can see it here on the top. I don't know if you're seeing my hand. Also removing the back, this 1-story and this atrium addition. excuse me, that was my mistake. And we're actually going to be reinstating the stoop, but that's going to be done at staff level with the landmarks. These houses are pretty intact, with the exception that number 34 has an artist window and an artist skylight. And number 36, our property, number 30 at the stoop was removed, prior to designation, and we'll see here when we look at the tax photos prior to 1940. So basically, the project will be again removal of that dormer skylight, a new rooftop addition and a deck, a new rear yard, single-story double height addition at the back. So basically, where we're removing this, and the restoration and reconstruction of the rear brick masonry back of the house, and we'll show you that design in a minute. In addition, we're going to have new rooftop mechanical equipment with screening, and it's sort of a code required handrail up there as well, which will also be discussed. Tax photos here show the property. As you can see, the stoop is removed, but apart from that, the house is relatively unchanged since either 1940, 1969, 1980. The 69 was the designation report. We included 2 older maps here because we did a little bit of a research into the rooftop skylight in determination whether it might have been an original feature. From these aerial photographs in 1926, and I can zoom in on this, we really can't pinpoint exactly that the skylight is there. We don't think it is. The roof looks pretty plain. You can see the neighboring property does have the addition, which is this artist studio roof on the top. So that was something that we discussed with landmarks in terms of original features. But as you'll see, even from this Google, this might be helpful. This is our property here, 36, with the white label on it. Our roof, this roof skylight feature is now fully glazed with aluminum. And at the back of the house, as you saw in the prior photograph, it's got aluminum sliders. So it's been significantly modified. So here you see the sort of green space, and also you can see the roofscape along here, which we're going to be discussing in terms of our rooftop addition. Number 30 and number 32 both have rooftop additions that were approved by landmarks. I didn't find the records for number 30 because it's older and it wasn't online, but number 32 is from 2017. Across the street here, there was you may or may not remember, 3739 Perry Street. It's a combination of 2 townhouses. I think Stephen Harris is the architects. There's a one-story, a similar height and proportion, full width rooftop addition that was approved by the commission in 2021. So kind of like more recently. Again, not visible from the public thoroughfare, but a rooftop addition in this location on this block. It's really not visible here in this, but you can see here that the front facade of these houses is very protected, with the exception of this beautiful artist studio window that's original and a pre-existing feature. Here you see the streetscape again. You can see that from the street, even though this is a photo montage, we try to do it. This is from exactly from across the street, from eye level. You can see that this roof line, the cornice line, is very intact. You can just see here, and if you want, I can zoom in a little bit. We have other zoom ins later. The hazard tape there is the top of our railing that's on our roof deck, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this is the streetscape on the south side of the street. This is our property. This is the north side of the street. Again, a little bit more difficult. It's a lot, as you can see, a lot more diverse in terms of styles. This 3739 is Italianate. We got some apartment buildings. You got sort of a Dutch thing and some Italianates. But in essence, this is 3739. This is the one that's an Italianate, similar height house that has the rooftop addition that's been approved by the commission. These are some zoning diagrams I'm going to skip by. This is sort of probably the best, clearest diagram of what we're proposing. What's red here will be removed. Here's the dormer skylight. We're taking out our chimneys. This chimney here is currently visible from the street. We're taking that out. We're taking out this rear addition, which is kind of a hodgepodge. We're not sure when it was built, in fact. It's sort of, we're unsure about the lineage of it, but we're taking it out, and we're obviously filing this as a full Alt-1 renovation. In the back, we're filling in this space. We're doing a double height addition here. We'll show you more. And then we're adding what is this green rooftop addition, definitely justified towards the back of the house, so it's not visible, but also not coplanar with the back of the house either, so we can maintain the rear facade and the original massing of the townhouse. Here's a view from the front, which is, you know, again, as an elevation, this looks like a major addition, but the reality is this is significantly set back and not a visible addition. We're cladding the exterior in standing seam zinc. We have some pictures of samples later, but basically it's like a roofing material. So it was chosen to to really, you know, distinguish itself from the original mass and features of the house. And again, these are things that are important from maybe other neighbors from higher buildings, et cetera, but obviously it's not visible from the public thoroughfare. And there you can see we're adding the stoop. So the client is really trying to make this house look like as original as it was when it was built in 1845. From the back on the left, the existing elevation. So here you can see that these windows at the dormer are like aluminum sliders. There's aluminum sliders here. At this floor, there's like this ribbon window, which was obviously not original to the house, but you know, it's been there for a while, we think. We don't have old photographs of the back of the house, but this is obviously a major modification to this property. The rear facade, and I don't know if that happened when this was done, but basically it's falling off. We have a structural engineer has told us that, you know, we've got 1 to 4 inch gaps between the back facade and the party walls. So our plan is to take down this wall and rebuild it. But as you can see here, you know, staying at the top of the house, looking at our rooftop addition and our fenestration, we're keeping the gutter line, which is the original gutter line of all the backs of the houses. We're bringing the brick, which will be either salvaged or, you know, newer brick that will be chosen to match the original, or mixing of both. But our plan is to do brownstone sills, brownstone lintels, the original construction of the back, the original sort of ratio and proportion to the back of the house, to this fenestration pattern. And then the addition sets back 4 feet at an angle and then rises up to basically it's about 12 feet above that gutter line, and it's 12 feet because of the slope of the house. The front and the back are obviously significantly different. This line up here is the line of the studio next door, and yeah, so basically that's what's happening at the top. This is again zinc clad steel window units. At the top here, the mechanical unit will be screened in a sort of a matte colored perforated. It's not going to be these large perforations. It's going to be much smaller, much more subtle. But basically, it's a very light, sort of as invisible as possible screening around the mechanical. This elevation here shows both existing and proposed. I think the existing self-evident, but proposed, what we're showing here is our addition in relation to the additions at number 30 and number 34. And also showing this line here is that gutter line all the way across. This is the house that has the studio addition at the top. The whole roof was raised on that addition, half story, so it's not compliant with that sort of gutter line. Sorry, I jumped there inadvertently. But basically, our addition is sort of trying to like keep the original massing of the original house, not doing any matching of this roof next door. But obviously, it is a greater height than the original house, if that makes sense. The section here, just for classic section showing the setback off the front of the house. You can see here that the handrail is slightly inside that setback, but again, we'll look at that in elevation or in rendering in a little bit. The guardrail might be visible. This here, this is the new chimney extension, which goes 3 feet above the new roof of the extension, or sorry, the rooftop addition. Here at the back, you see this is the gutter line of the original house, and then this is the bulk of the new addition. Will be visible, but it's obviously not from any public thoroughfare. So here you see the rooftop, the rear yard addition, which is we're making into a great room, but in essence, it's the full width of the house of the property, and the same depth as the neighboring addition, which is, oops, sorry. We're not really doing any, we're just doing some minor excavation to get some ceiling height in our cellar, not doing any underpinning or disturbing of the neighbor's footings. This section is just the opposite direction, not really telling much more other than the fact that the mechanical units shown here, and we can also prove that that's not a visible item. And keeping going, this here is a cross section through the staircase. Again, just really showing that the neighbor's house here has an addition, a skylight addition. This is the skylight of the neighbor on the east, which is number 34. This is number 38 or 36. It has both the skylight, or it has the artist studio addition plus a bulkhead at that location. So going into photographs with our mock-up in place. This is taken, as you can see from this little diagram here, 2 views coming from the west on Perry Street, sort of the worst case scenarios. We're showing this, unfortunately, a lot of sidewalk scaffolding across the street, but this is our property here. This is the extension for the chimney. After that, you can just about see here, this is a zoom in from the same photograph, the top of the handrail. Same matter in this photograph, which is a little bit further down the street, slightly more, but basically the handrail and this chimney here will be removed. This chimney here will be extended. So you can see that the situation is very similar between the two. From across the street and from further east on Perry Street, directly across the street, the handrail, again, like I described, will be somewhat visible. There's another situation in number 40 where it's almost exact same handrail is just as visible. And then here you can see the chimney extension. In this one here, I think we photoshopped out the other chimney here in this area. This is what the rooftop looks like now. As you can see, the skylight is not really that typical of an artist skylight from the turn of the 1920s, but we're not, it's not conclusive, but it's been modified significantly and it's in pretty poor condition inside. This is the neighbor's skylight to the west, and their chimney. This would be extended, and this is to the east. This is our chimney that's going to be removed. And I'm going to rapidly go through that. Here's our mock-up, just to explain the mock-up, because these things can look a little confusing. The upper yellow lines here, this is obviously taken from the corner looking back, looking east from the front of the house. The upper line here is the guardrail for the for the upper level. The top of the penthouse is actually here, this line here. And this is the setback. Here, sort of, we went to the other corner and looked back where we just took that photo from. This is obviously the extension. This is the guardrail on the upper level. Sorry about that. And here is the chimney extension. This is the height of the guardrail at the front. This a little bit more complicated to look at, but basically you're back in the corner and you're in the middle of the, you're looking back at the sides of the landmarks permitted us to not build this entirely because it was very difficult to build it over the existing skylight. So it continues back a little bit more, but we have a rendering here to show what it'll look like from the back of the house. This is a rendering from the front of the house. So this is our house here with the green cornice. It'll be black, more in keeping with, you know, what, not always, but you know, basically what we're proposing: black windows, black cornice, black door. But here you see the handrail, and here you see the chimney top extension. These chimneys here were removed from this image, and so in essence that goes away and this goes in. So we do think that this is a little bit less of visibility, but obviously we need to extend these up to maintain the function of the neighbor's chimneys with our addition. From the back of the house, sorry, this is the view further down. Again, this is a rendering, so you can see here the chimney. Basically, this is what it's showing, but in essence, our house will hopefully look as elegant as everyone else as we add back our stoop and front door. At the back, here's a photograph, which sort of, again, you saw something similar to this earlier on. This shows the dormer, these ribbon windows at the top floor, then these original openings, and then this addition. There's some trees and vegetation, so we, for clarity's sake, and really just so you can, we're not trying to like hide anything here behind any vegetation, we render at the back. It's not exactly the same location, but this window here would be this window here, and you can't really see, this is, you can't really see, this is like a T porch here, and then these two windows here are like the artist studio windows in our neighbor. Basically, you're seeing that we're matching the rear extension. We are adding a little railing here, similar to the railing next door, like this railing up here. And we're doing this new sort of punched masonry, original fenestration pattern above, keeping the gutter line the same as the neighbors, and you know, basically adding on top of that sort of a rooftop addition. Beyond, you can just see the perforation of the mechanical. But basically, this is a view that, you know, obviously we will get in our garden, but and the neighbors behind will get, but this is not a publicly visible view. But the brick up here is red brick, like original. We've decided to make the brick at the addition be, again, a sort of an honest brick material, but in a different color. It's going to be a sort of a gray black brick, and instead of regular garden or Dutch bond, it'll be a stack bond with a soldier course above this new large opening. Here are some details. So sort of an example of a standing seam zinc roof, some details of that. Here's the brick shown in install. This is sort of from the manufacturer. The rear windows will be black. This is all relative stuff. This is the screening, eco screen. After that, I'm going to run because I don't want to, I know that time is limited on these things. This is some views of the rear garden. Existing, again, we're sort of repeating ourselves here a little bit, but if you had any questions about what's going on back there, these are images for your review. This is sort of a panoramic view, like this will go wrap all the way around to here. Our property is in the middle here. It's somewhat helpful, but obviously it's very distorted. And here, this might be even more helpful. I think that our property has this dormer. These are the two, number 32 and number 34 rooftop additions. And this is the one that was raised up. So basically these three houses are all raised above original. And that's just some pictures of the neighboring property. This also doesn't really show these additions. Those additions are not so visible from the back, but they do have railings and guardrails. This is the addition that we will be matching the height of. So, you know, it's helpful maybe to visualize that our new addition will be the same height as this. And same scale, obviously, as well, because they're same houses. And these are just floor plans for reference and some details that I don't know that you may want to go through. The rooftop here, we'll have a roof deck at the front of the house. The railing will follow the line of the front of the property, which is slightly sloped or angled. The penthouse itself here is sort of straight to the party walls. And that concludes our presentation. I think that I covered everything, and would love to hear any questions or comments.
Thank you. One question before we have the discussion. The railing that shows the small amount is black.
Yes.
Okay. Susan, if you would recognize who wishes to speak.
Okay, is there anybody? Brian Cape would like to speak.
Well, thank you very much. It's a beautiful rendition of the alterations. I certainly have nothing about the front to comment on, but the back seems like there seems to be something, a kilter in the back with such a large glass opening on the lower level and the window that's not balanced on the back elevation. And it just doesn't, nothing lines up with what is above. So I wonder why that ended up like that instead of balanced.
It's a very fair question. We are putting an elevator into this house, and the elevator is going to be on this side of the property. So basically, from these floors down, most of our circulation goes in this side of the property. So it's almost like there's a core that runs along there. When we get to the roof, the core is pretty much there. I can show you in plan if you'd like. I don't know if that was your question though. Your question is you don't like so here you can see this is our elevator. This is our staircase. So everything's kind of stacked against this side. So this window is very much like, oh, sorry about that. Very much as close to, we have the elevator at the front. So the window is offset, is off center on this side. We also need to put a ladder in to go up for fire department access to get to the upper roof. So in essence, the windows are shifted to the east for that reason.
And then on the lower level, it's shifted again the opposite direction. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's because of the fireplace. We're adding a fireplace here, a gas fireplace.
I think it would be improved to have a balanced opening in that wall. So thank you very much.
Anita
Thank
Brandt.
you.
Thank you. Anita Brandt, committee member Anita Brandt.
Thank you, Susan. A couple of questions. First of all, the stoop and the ironwork, is that being reviewed at staff level?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. And then I just wanted to say something that I really liked about your presentation, which is the massing and the rear facade with the gutter line, respecting that. I think that's very, very important. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the comment.
I'm Susan Gammy. I'm the vice chair of the committee, and I have one question regarding the fenestration on the third and fourth floors of the rear facade. Very much appreciate the fact that the punched openings retain the original vocabulary. We definitely like to see the story of the original structure being honored. And with that in mind, my question for you is, why are there casement windows?
Good. It's a good question. We have doors at this level here, so they're narrower openings. They're 40-inch openings. So we really wanted to do steel windows, and you really can't do double hung steel windows. So it is definitely a newer technology, if you want. It's not original to the house, but I do get that point. So these are doors, and again, they're like French doors. So the idea was that they were going to be smaller and narrower profile, so you get more light inside. And then once these were steel French doors, it seemed to make sense that these would be steel casement windows. And that, although I totally take your point on this, and in another project, if we didn't have a terrace, perhaps we would go with a wood double hung window throughout to match what we're doing in the front. But that was our reasoning behind it, just so you understand. And also, I mean, Landmarks does generally at the rear of the property, they do accept. They're more interested in the openings, to be honest. But yes, I do understand that question. So that was our
Thank you for explaining that. Committee member Albert Bennett wishes to speak. Albert, please speak.
Yes, another question about the railings. It says at one point that the railings are all around. I'm not quite sure what that means. The guardrails. And is there a rail on the roof as well as on the second floor there?
Yep. There's, obviously the second floor has what we did was just to go back to that quickly, what we did was, because of its heights, we matched the height of our addition to the neighbor to get to, because in essence, well, not trying to suppose that you know this, but a lot of these like double height additions are what people are doing on the backs of houses. And so, but we wanted, we have 4 of these 6 houses have a double height addition if ours is approved. So there is sort of a new sort of typologies that we're trying to keep with the level of that. When we do that, we added the railing on top to keep our 42-inch required handrail. And again, that's what the neighbor has done here. You can see it. So we're doing this in essence the same thing. At the top here, we are required to put in a by OSHA, like for access to the mechanical equipment, a open guardrail. And at the front of the house, probably best to go to a section, maybe front of the house. This is a roof deck. You have to walk up a couple of steps to go out because of the height change in the roof. But this is a new roof deck here, and this is a handrail that goes around basically on 3 sides around. It's sort of set back from the neighbors a little bit. So I don't know if that answered your question. I can show you in plan if that's helpful as well.
No, that answers very well. The material, however, it's painted iron railings.
Yeah, painted steel picket.
Steel.
And I mean, I don't think, it would be steel painted, but it would look like a wrought iron, but it would be basically, I pulled up this image, excuse me for scrolling through quickly. This here shows, I don't know if you see that, but that's number 40. They have a steel picket handrail like this, open, super simple. Generally what Landmarks wants us to do in these situations. But we would have the same thing here. It's not something that we think is going to draw undue attention to itself, but it will be slightly visible. As you can see, let me see. This one's easier to see. This
Yes.
one there. And we had detail on that before, and Landmarks requested that we remove that so that it feels even simpler. But that was the idea. The detail will be replicated down here with these neighbors at the ground level, at the street level. But this is going to be simple.
Well, thank you very much. It's a beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much.
All right, Brendan, I see your hand is up. Please mute yourself.
Susan, hi, David.
Hi there.
The front facade, what's the extent of the material replacement, if any?
We will be putting in a new cornice
Mhm.
above the front door, brownstone entablature, if you want, probably a better word, and obviously the new door and the new brownstone stoop or cast stone stoop that will replicate brownstone. And after that, the window openings are all the same. It's a restoration of the cornice, and repair and repaint, and sort of assess it once we've got everything in place and we have some scaffolding up. But the idea is to keep it and also to add, the new entrance at the ground floor. We will be obviously replicating the steps down in the lower court. Currently, it's much higher right now, and there's only steps at the front door. So we'll be digging out that area.
Okay, I understand. So the windows are being rehabilitated, or they're intact at this point?
They're being replaced fully. But we're doing wood windows. We're doing Lepage wood windows with black paint and with matching the original. These windows are original on the two top floors. They're in very poor condition, but we can replicate the profile and shape of the windows.
Okay, so it was the condition that, because, my understanding is that 1850 and previous, every effort needs to be made to rehabilitate the windows. So I guess you provided documentation of these windows that they are not terrible.
Yeah, we met with Landmarks on site and we looked at the windows.
What is going on here? What?
The microphones are very sensitive. I think sometimes people move papers around, even it
Oh,
sounds
sorry.
like a
Whoever
truck.
is not speaking, please mute yourself.
Okay. And then the chimney is being removed. Is that historic material?
It's original. It was extended. This chimney here, originally was extended. We haven't had any comments back from Landmarks.
Mhm.
Any problems with that removal? They did want to see what the effect of the extension of the other chimneys would be, but we didn't encounter any pushback on chimney removal.
Okay. Thank you, David. That's all I have.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Is there anybody else from the committee or the community board who wishes to speak?
Susan, I have one I just need to clarify. The depth of the rear extension.
Yep. I'm going to go to the plan just to check that.
Yeah, just to write it in the notes.
It's, well, I'm gonna go to the zoning diagram because I think that's the most binding one. I don't want to give you the wrong dimension. 14 foot one is a rear extension depth.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, hang on. Yes, Jeffrey.
Hi, I just have a quick question about the rear windows. The illustration that I'm looking at doesn't show me how many panes are we talking about? Are we talking about multi-pane? Will it be made to have mullions and look like either 2/4 or 3/6? The front has 6/6, but you're not doing that because of the type of window it is. I'm just wondering, are you going to have, let's say, a 2 or 4/4 on each side, or? I don't see, I just see single panes on the whole window.
That's our plan. Our plan is to have single pane.
Wouldn't it be better to match the buildings on the left and right? And also the front of the building in terms of the size of the pane, as historically large panes weren't widely used.
We've looked at that. But our client has asked us that we go as moneyless as possible. It may be something we may end up going to the commission and getting some feedback on, but
if we have a comment, we'll include it in the resolution then.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
That was certainly my only question. I thank you very much for your time.
Not at all. Not at all. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? There doesn't appear to be anybody else who wishes to speak. So, David, I'm going to return you to attendee status, and then Larissa Jimenez, I'll be happy to promote you so that you can make your presentation and screen share. Thank you.
I'm hearing badly. Are we doing 1 Bond Street now?
The applicant for 1 Bond Street came late, did not identify herself. She wasn't on the spreadsheet as the presenter for 1 Bond.
Oh.
Didn't identify herself as the presenter for 1 Bond, and then had to leave early because of a prior commitment. So Mark has communicated with her and is starting a dialogue with her. So it looks like that will have to wait until the August meeting.
If I may, I've asked them to confirm that they are not calendared for LPC public hearing before the August meeting. And I didn't get a response.
So Waverly Place is next. That's fine if we're not hearing Bond Street. Susan, are you ready for Waverly Place?
Not quite.
So
I'll read in the meantime.
go over here.
22 Waverly Place, the application is to install a gate at the entrance steps and to evacuate the rear yard
Yeah.
from the cellar.
No, just. Okay, well, yeah, she can preach it. So Larissa, there you are. There was a second Larissa. Should that person also be promoted?
Yes, please.
Okay, second Larissa, you need to click yes when the prompt comes. Okay. No, why is he still there? Okay.
Okay, Larissa. Please feel free to start your presentation.
Hello, can you all see me? Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Sarah and I and learn a little bit about our project. I'll go to full screen. So as mentioned, the project is an existing single-family townhouse, and there are really two items that we are applying for. The first is a safety gate at the front stoop. And it's really just really for the family's safety that is going to be living there. They have 4 young children, and we were able to, at staff level, have, have the front fence approved to be raised a bit higher for safety, but would like to apply for having a safety gate at the front stoop as well, just as another barrier between the home and the street. So this higher gate at the stairs down to the cellar was previously approved by landmarks at staff level. However, the front gate at the steps, they asked that we submit to the community board and have a public hearing. So one zoomed in view just gives you an enlarged view of that taller fence at the entrance to the cellar. And you can see in the tax lot photo, this is the property here. And this was the old railing that's installed. And we are just asking for this portion to be considered as an addition for the new owners. And we've included 2 recent similar projects that have been approved by the community and landmarks. One is directly across the street at 119 Waverly, and as well as up the block at 138 Waverly. So that's sort of the first portion. And this is the only scope that is actually visible from the public thoroughfare. And I will move on to the second portion of the scope, which is the work at the rear yard, which is really at the cellar. The client would like to extend the depth of the existing cellar, which would require excavation at the rear yard to extend the cellar. And then we would, sort of build the rear yard back on top of the cellar excavation, the new cellar extension, sorry. So these are photos of the existing rear yard. There is a sort of a raised terrace portion at the north end of the rear yard, which you can, is sort of hidden under these trees down at the bottom of my cursor. And then it steps down to a lower portion at the rear of the yard here. And the new proposed, we've created a grade diagram of the existing rear yard and then the proposed. So that one in purple is that raised patio area. There is an existing planter with trees, and we would just sort of reconfigure that and repurpose the trees along that terrace, and then step down to the existing level of the lower portion of the rear yard. where the client would like to install a hot tub, and it's sort of a combination hot tub lap pool at the rear of the yard. And one thing we would like to include, just to provide some light down to the cellar extension, is a skylight, an in-ground skylight that would provide light into that new extended cellar space. So in this, these are the plans for the existing rear yard. Again, you can see this.
Please increase the size
Sure.
of exactly what the part you're talking about.
Yep.
But thank you,
I'm just going to exit full screen.
as much as you can, I think would be useful.
So here you can see a side by side.
That's much better, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Here you can see a side by side of the proposed, of the existing, sorry, plan on the left and the proposed on the right. So we would maintain that higher patio and repurpose the planters and the trees over to the west side of that patio terrace. And, you know, install a sort of an outdoor grill and a countertop, and then step down to the existing level of the rear yard, the lower rear yard level, and have the hot tub, swim, spa, pool at the back, as well as a skylight in the ground to provide light to the cellar. And we are also at the rear property line, maintaining the existing trees and the planting bed that is currently there, so as not to disturb that and provide privacy, you know, the existing privacy that exists between the neighbors. Just shift to the next page.
Are you coming to the dimensions of the excavation
In terms of the depth, yes.
and the
So,
size?
yes.
If you're doing that later, fine.
Yes. So this is a plan of the proposed cellar extension. And you can see the property line is dashed in red for reference. And the cellar, the existing building footprint, you can see over to the left is this sort of thick wall, and we would be extending the cellar this full depth of about 35 feet, 30 to 35 feet. We're trying to maintain the existing planting along the property line on the back. And we've just prepared a few sections for review. Oops, sorry, my mouse is very sensitive. So this is the top section is of the existing condition with the view west, showing the higher patio, the existing planter with the trees, and then the lower patio and the rear, the trees at the rear property line. And in this section, the second section, you're able to see the proposed cellar extension and the fact that it is in line with the existing first floor and sort of, you know, extends under the higher patio and then proceeds further south into the backyard. And the main space, you know, would have a pretty generous ceiling height in order to maintain the same lower level height at the rear yard. And then at the sort of storage areas in the cellar, we've lowered the ceiling to help provide some depth to allow the hot tub to recess or be sunk a bit into the ground so that it is only, raised above that lower level of the rear yard, minimally about 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet. And then these are section views to the east, where you can see the existing raised patio, the steps down to the lowered patio area, and the trees along the south perimeter, south property line. And in the proposed, again, you can see sort of the ceiling extending below that raised patio, and then reducing as we work our way under the lowered patio and into the storage areas beneath the hot tub and spa bath. So just for reference, previously we had submitted to, prior to sort of going down the road of the cellar excavation and extension. Originally, we were just doing work at the rear yard, and this was the plan that was previously approved by landmarks at staff level. So the overall components that were previously approved are sort of still in the proposed plan, just shifted around a bit. So the hot tub, rotates back to the south side of the rear yard, but overall the patio heights and the components of the planters and the trees were all previously approved at staff level. And these are just for reference, the previously approved sections of the rear yard. So the higher patio, the lower patio, and we were still doing the spa hot tub, although it was going to be, on grade, so it was going to sit higher above the finish level of the lower patio than we are now proposing with the excavation. And that is our presentation.
Okay, could you go back to, I believe it's the next to the last section of the excavation? It seemed to have everything in it. The one just before that, the other side, okay. Now from this, what is the distance from the existing rear wall to the back of the excavation?
So this is it's 3'9" to the fence. So it's a little over 4 feet.
No, the opposite one, the part that's being excavated.
Oh, to the rear, sorry, from
the rear of the rear wall of the building to the,
30,
if you will, the rear wall of the excavation.
sure. It's just shy of 35 feet, 34 feet, 9 inches.
And then there remains approximately 4 feet of planter
Correct.
as a buffer to the
Mhm.
adjoining property. Okay, and side to side, is it property line to property line?
Yes.
Which is 20 feet or?
They are 22. Yeah.
Okay, and the now inside the house, what excavations involved?
Within the house, we are not proposing excavation other than just at this stair area, which I'll show you in plan. Sorry. So we would need to excavate just at where, sort of the footprint of this stair in the corner here, where the existing building sits.
That's the west side of the cellar, correct? East side.
Yeah, southeast, yeah.
And how much is being, what is the total length and depth of that excavation?
So this would be, I'm just gonna zoom in, 'cause my eyes are not great either. 7'9". And the width is 5'9".
And so the 7'9" dimension touches the party wall.
The 7'9" dimension touches the rear wall, and the 5'9" touches the party wall. I'm sorry, I don't understand. It's 7'9" wide? Long, and then 5'9"
Then the
wide.
party wall is where your hand is now.
Correct.
So from there, from that point, the back wall within the house, is that the 7 feet
Ye-
1 inch?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay, and what provision is being made about the party wall? Is that underpinned?
That is the intention, yes.
So there'll be a total underpinning of 7 feet.
Correct. Yep.
So the other side remains. And the depth, if we go back to the section, please. It varies. Let's take the depth from the closest to the house.
So the depth from the existing cellar is 4 feet.
The depth that's being excavated.
From the, just relative to the existing floor level of the cellar is 4 feet.
No, from the garden, where the door is.
That would, yeah, sure. That would be 12'6".
And that it represents 4 feet below the
Correct.
existing cellar.
Existing cellar, yeah.
That I believe is it. And then we have to, okay. What is on either side after is there any building on either side of the part that is outside the subject property? In
So
the
there
garden?
is, yes, there is an existing carriage house on the. Sorry.
Okay, is that more, I want to know all of the excavation that's involved and
So there is an existing,
I mean, and all of the underpinning that's involved. That's terribly important.
okay. So there is an existing 1-story carriage house at the west property. And we did a test pit just to look at the foundation there. And the plan is to underpin that property as well.
And how much is that?
The length of it
Yep.
is. Oops, sorry. Just check. It is about 23 feet.
And anything that's not the staircase and not the adjacent carriage house is into other
Yards,
abuts other gardens, is that correct?
correct.
And at the back, it abuts the existing planter box.
Yes, correct. Yep.
I believe that's it, unless others come out in the questioning about the committee. Okay, Susan, thank you.
Please. Unmute yourself. Thank you.
Can we go to the gate now? To the existing, please, the existing street facade. Okay. And the existing and the proposed, yeah, that's what concerned me is on top of the fence. Of the fence, not of the gate, on the top of the fence, what appear to be spikes. Is that true? They're existing now.
This is proposed, the fence that my cursor is sort of hovering over. This was proposed, but it was approved at staff level for this raised gate fence. But yes, it does have, the intention is to have sort of a scrollish spike on top.
And those are, there will not be those spikes on the fence, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we would be happy to have them. Needed.
It's a shame that we have to have them, but
Yeah,
anyway, thank you so much for the presentation.
thank you.
I'm going to piggyback on Albert's. That was my question. Was it understanding that the fence was approved at staff level? I am surprised to see the spikes having been approved. Did they explicitly approve the spikes as well as the additional height on the fence?
Yes, well, they approved based on all of these drawings that we had presented to them, so.
All right,
the spikes were
thanks.
included. Mhm.
Are you aware of other residential fences in the district that have spikes like this?
I believe we have a few precedents, not, I don't think we have them in the presentation here, but we'd be happy to send through photos. Yeah, they're not in this one, but I know a little bit further up on Waverly, there is a tall fence that has, I think it's about 2 or 3 buildings down, a similar profile. Here you can see it a little bit better. But we can absolutely provide photos, just showing that more examples.
Thank you, thank you. Nita Brandt, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, good, because it's on the same subject. Do you, first of all, how high is that new fence? I'm very surprised we weren't shown this, that it shouldn't go to a hearing. But anyway, that's what it is. But how tall is it?
It's about a little over 4 feet.
Very odd height for the district. The other thing is the gate.
Mhm.
Now, that's a historic stoop, correct?
Correct.
So do you have some details, some drawings you can show us how you're attaching to the existing stoop? And also, is there a reason why it is so plain? I mean, I've never seen, that's sort of like a fix-it fence.
So I think we'd be happy to match the detail on the existing, sort of this detail with the circles.
How old is this building? How old is this building?
I believe this was 1901.
Are you sure? Because they always say that when they don't know at DOB, but it's always 1901 or.
It says 1900 in my research.
I would just say that I would prefer to see much more about this gate. How's it attached? How's it fastened at the bottom stoop? Is there a closer? This is also, and how big is it? You know, you're swinging into really busy sidewalks here.
Mhm.
And is one secure, which is the active? I don't know, I just feel like it's too minimal what I'm looking at. Not only the design, but also maybe the information.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sure.
Along that line, we would always ask for automatic closure.
Mhm.
I don't believe you mentioned that, but
No, but yeah, that would definitely be the intent so that it,
There's very
Okay.
little information, nothing on the hardware, how it's attached, and this is an odd stoop. It's very nice because you don't have to climb high. It's only a
Right.
couple steps. But then it's got these sidewalls and then a railing above, so it's complicated.
Mhm.
It's gonna look very odd because you're just gonna have like a gate here and then it's gonna be sort of open. I
Mhm.
don't know. I think it needs to be really thought out as to how you're gonna secure it.
Sure.
It's only like a couple of points that you can attach it to structurally.
Yeah, the intent was to sort of have vertical. I'll just zoom in a little bit. Vertical sections that would secure and attach to the stoop itself, because the wall is pretty straight and substantial. And I'll just zoom in on the photo of the existing home.
Do you know what I mean? It's gonna look a little weird. You got this open thing in the back and then you've got this really tall. I just would like maybe if there was more design thought and put into that.
Okay,
okay, we can make a recommendation in the resolution.
Okay, Brian Pate has a question.
Thank you. I'll just follow up on that same topic, first of all. That the reason that there are so few gates on stoops is because it does swing out into the sidewalk, and that's very dangerous. It's a hazard, but it also destroys the historic appearance of the stoop.
Mhm.
And we're really trying not to destroy the historic appearance of the front facades, that these street fronts. And so there's a lot of reluctance to, doesn't matter how fancy you put it, it's still a change to the historic appearance of the house. And I don't believe that there's a justification for it. My other comment is this extremely large excavation in the.
Could we, I'm sorry, excuse me, Brian, are there any more comments on the front so we get goes?
and I will say that the main,
Okay.
the main,
If there are no more comments on the front, go ahead, Brian, please.
the main reason for even adding or wanting to add this and raising the fence is just a safety concern.
No,
The-
we understood that from the presentation, so let's move on to the back, please. Brian, can you? continue?
Yes, all right, so it's a very large excavation and it is, well, it's right next to a building and it's a brick building. It's an old brick building. All of these things mean that this tremendous amount of excavation is going to endanger the neighbors' structures. And no matter how carefully you excavate, this is a very major danger. And of course, we are all very much sensitive due to the number 12, 14, and 16 Gay Street. episode that we've just been through, where there was excavation in the of a foundation next to another old buildings and a very disastrous result. So we're very skeptical about going and excavating right up to the property line where there's an adjacent building.
Mhm.
And I think that we'd have to, I would like to see a lot more structural engineering and detailing before I could be comfortable with it. Although I love the design of the backyard, the patios, the spa and so forth, all of those elements, not a problem, but what's underneath it is what counts.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Is there anybody else on the committee or from the community board who wishes to speak?
If that's all done, I will, please.
Go ahead, Chanel.
It's an unusual excavation. What's appreciated is that there's not more underneath the house. It was, if I may speak firmly, inexcusable that the degree of excavation and particularly the underpinning was not in the presentation. I felt I had to drag it out bit by bit. And for the Landmarks Commission hearing, it certainly should be front and center of a part of what this excavation is. And along with Brian, it's a very great deal of the property. And I'm not quite satisfied about the parts that are not adjacent to a building, but we'll mention that in the resolution. Thank you. Susan, members of the public now.
Yes. Pete Davies is here in person. Go ahead, Pete. Come on up and speak so that.
I just, Pete Davies, I just, in regard to the rear yard, the levels, is there any ADA requirement for what happens in the back, or is that just?
I was single.
So you can do, okay. I would like to hear that from the applicant.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Are you waiting
Yeah,
for a
is there-
response?
Is there any consideration for
Marissa, can you respond?
accessibility?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. It's a single family house, so it's not required to comply.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Jeffrey,
Yes, I also have concerns about the rear yard and the buildings adjacent to the rear yard. I mean, I live in a building, I know the community, the board is obviously concerned with what happened at Gay Street and Fifth Avenue, but I live in a previously approved 182 Spring Street. I live near that excavation where they tore it down and built. And our building has moved over 5 centimeters since the excavation. And that is with all the appropriate approvals and cautions that they are supposedly doing. Now they are going to have to brace us with iron, steel, and beams. What concerns me is, do you have an arrangement with the neighbors that have trees growing adjacent to it? So you're going to dig down, cutting into roots of the trees. You'll be killing the trees on their adjacent properties and risking the foundations of the adjacent building. And I'm very opposed to the idea of this excavation. I think it's a bad idea. And I'd like to know if they have contacted neighbors and if they have arrangements or contracts with the neighbors regarding any damage to those properties.
They're
Thank you.
sure. Thank you. They have not, we have been in touch with the neighbors, but they have not, they do not have agreements in place just yet. I think we were going to see, sort of how things progress, and dig test pits and see exactly, what exists. in the various locations in the rear yard.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Jeffrey?
Yeah, yes, it addresses it. I'd like to have, that wish they had contacted neighbors before they came to this meeting, so we'd have clear statements about how the neighbors feel and what risks they feel that they're being put at. But I know from our experience down where I live, that they're being put at a great deal of risk, and they may not even realize it. And so I think it's a bad plan to allow this depth of excavation. Perhaps if they were to keep 3 feet away from the property line, they might be able to do it without interrupting in any way. But if they're going right to the property line, just digging the dirt away is going to allow collapsing dirt on the other side unless they shore it up, in which case then they'd have to repack the earth after they shored it up. So there's a lot of problems with that kind of construction. So unless they're staying well away from the property lines, either side, I can't imagine that it makes any good sense to approve this plan.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we will discuss our similar concerns during the business session on that. Thank you.
Just to clarify one thing with the drawing that's up, the dark line in the upper left-hand corner is the carriage house. I assume the wall of the carriage house.
No, that's a neighbor's fence. The carriage house is on the right side on the.
Could you also just, I'm curious, what are the elevations of the gardens on all 3 sides? Are they?
So it varies. The garden to the south is approximately the same level as our lower portion, sort of where they join. The garden to the east is actually a few feet lower. We did get a property survey completed, so we have the actual heights we can include. And then the neighbor to the west is also slightly lower before the carriage house.
And are there retaining walls or no?
There are retaining walls. I believe it's a little hard to see along the east wall. There's, sort of fences cladding everything, but yes, we believe there's a retaining wall along the east wall. And then on the portion of the west wall, there's a small retaining wall because there's not much of a height difference there.
Thank you.
Have you made some provision about stabilizing then the garden since they're at different levels as well as the houses?
Correct. So that is part of, there would be a structural component, but also supportive excavation plans that would take into account providing support for the gardens, for all of the buildings.
And I think it would be useful for us to understand this, to know what the great concern is for having to go to the property line rather than leaving an angle of repose.
Mhm.
All right, is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
I didn't hear an answer to my question.
Oh, sorry, Chenault.
I'm asking the applicant what the reason is for why it's necessary to go to the property line rather than leaving some space on each side, which would go a long way toward settling this problem.
So I think the client was aiming to maximize their floor area, but we would definitely, if the neighbors,
Okay.
if there were issues with the
Probably
neighbors or
suspected.
the
Thank you.
community, we'd be open to reducing the width.
Or Susan, is everything
Thank you, Larissa. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? I don't see anybody who wishes to speak, but last call. All right, thank you, Larissa. I will
Thank you.
return you to attendee right now.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we begin the business session and the impediments? Does anyone from the board wish to speak about anything? Okay.
Yes, Carter has his hand raised. Carter, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm out on the street right now, but I just was I put it in the chat that one bond was on the LPC calendar for July 25th. So I was just curious as to what typically the board response is if something is calendared, it's already moving forward, and they don't appear before us.
Mark said earlier that he had somehow settled that.
We deny
I think, the applicant was not registered with the community board as a presenter. The applicant came late. We started with the second item because the unidentified applicant wasn't even here for the meeting at the beginning. So we started with the second one. The applicant made a brief appearance as an attendee, again, did not identify herself as a presenter. And before the second application was even complete, put in the chat, as I'm sure everybody has seen, that she had to, or he had to leave due to the fact that it was their son's birthday. So we had a momentary appearance of a person who didn't register with the community board and who didn't identify themselves as the presenter. So Chenault, I'm sure you will have a sense of procedurally what is correct, but I would certainly say that my feeling would be to treat this as if the person had not, in fact, even come and deny until we have a proper presentation.
Yeah, and in the end, it's the same as an incomplete application because there was none.
Right.
So they'll have to come back.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because somebody else from the building was not aware of the application. And I guess there's some other issues which are not germane to the landmarks application, but consistent with just moving forward and ahead, damn the torpedoes, so to speak. And I just wanted to make sure that we were on record if they didn't appear, saying that you were not in.
Everyone should be assured it won't go forward of the commission until it comes here. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carter. Bye.
We're ready for Perry Street.
We're in executive now, right?
Yeah, well, we're starting the business session now, and let's start with 36 Perry Street, right, Chenault?
Okay. Well, do we want to say anything about the front facade and the
Okay with me.
activities of we can comment on what the commission staff have decided. If we
Sounds
want.
fine with me.
Well, we didn't get really a presentation on it. I mean, it was
But I mean, we saw the drawing and all.
minimally. I mean, we weren't there to review it. I didn't see any ironwork or stoop details. That's what I was looking.
Okay, I'm assuming there's no complaint about removing the skylight and the chimney.
Oh, I was
No.
wondering about the chimney and what the committee's policy is, or what your experience has been with chimney removal. Whether they're considered significant features or not.
It's never been an issue when they needed to be taken away.
I think we have to be flexible, Brendan, because frequently they need to be extended quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, they're chimneys, so we have to let them be what they are. I think if they can be moved back, if they're going to be modified and be an eyesore, then as much as possible, we want them to be adjusted back towards the back of the building.
So some of the very tall chimneys we might see in the district are a result of having to elevate over the years. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
the code.
Mhm. Cool,
Yes,
thank
this
you.
is a situation where safety and fire concerns
Mhm.
take precedence historically.
Again, unless I can ship them back, if they're a big eyesore, we've seen some.
Yeah.
over the years that weren't that attractive and could be adjusted.
While we're there, there's no objection, I assume, to the way the chimney ended up, the one that's there.
Not by me.
And the rooftop addition clearly doesn't show. Any comments on it otherwise?
No, I think it was a good all-around project, well presented, in my opinion.
And the railing
It's fine.
on with what
Okay.
railings are.
The nice utilitarian railing, we like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay,
I mean, unfortunately, I don't know that we have a leg to stand on, but I do think that the casement windows on the third and fourth floors of the rear facade are not harmonious.
oh,
with-
we're coming there. Absolutely. Sorry, one moment.
Going into his house.
Um, I have a gentleman caller. The rear wall demolition seems to be inevitable. I'm going down the list as it was presented. And they were to rebuild with a salvage brick. If it can be salvaged, or matching brick is clearly the correct thing. Going from the bottom up, we'll get to your windows, Susan. The excavation of the cellar, in that it doesn't reach any side walls, would seem to be non-controversial. Is that agreed?
Yes,
Agreed.
Agreed.
yeah.
Let's go from the top down. Seems easier somehow. The top,
Where is he? He's like, it's funny with the building behind you. It looks like you're looking in the window.
the rooftop addition is what it is on the back. And now the windows don't line up is my next. Susan,
Susan, you're up.
you want to
Well,
comment
I
on the
think,
window?
there was Brian's earlier point about the alignment of the windows, and I think that's a point well taken. And, I feel that given that what we like to see is, and historically have put in our resolutions, is that the third and fourth floors of these buildings retain their original integrity and their original fenestration. I mean, I'm glad that there are punched openings, but, and I think the tail is wagging the dog a little bit. I mean, because on the third floor, they're not actually windows, they're doors. So now that's driving the situation on the fourth floor. And I don't know how we want to address that. What do people think?
And if that hadn't been for the disintegration of the back wall, there wouldn't be a question because it'd still be there.
Right. So what do others think about that?
Well, I don't know. I think that he did so much else right
Mhm.
that if that's so important, it doesn't bother me that much because I think the punched opening. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the casement in those historic type openings, but the downstairs has the French doors. It's in steel, so I'm inclined to let it go.
Okay.
In my opinion.
I see that Carter's hand is up. Carter, I don't know if your hand is still up from previously or if you'd like to speak.
It was up from previously. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thanks.
Well, do we want to recommend casements or no? Does anybody else,
Recommend.
does anybody not want us to recommend casements?
You mean double hung?
I mean, double, not. Yes, double hung instead of casements.
I like the recommendation.
No, I don't. I think that the window the window style is fitting with all the other floors on the rear elevation. That's a clear choice that they made from the very top to the very bottom. They're not historic type of fenestration. But the window openings, I think that's the criteria, that's the crux of it, and they are being true to that part of it. And so I'm nitpicking with the lower window balance. But that kind of fits with the alignment of the windows above. And so I'm sticking with that, but otherwise it's all modern single glaze.
Can I ask you a question about the balance comment? My question is that the way we see the drawings is not at all the way we would perceive it in real life. So it's not symmetrical, and I get that, but you'd probably never see it that way, would you?
Well, it's certainly not in public view, but for the observer in the backyard.
Well, they're on different planes, quite dramatic. I mean, they're
That's
really
true.
not flat. It's not a flat, it's like, and then.
Right. So in my comment was because, yes, it not only didn't align with the opening on the left side, but it didn't balance with the opening on the right side. So even if you were just looking at the lower extension all by itself, just that wall, it's off balance.
Asymmetrical.
Yeah. And there's nothing to keep the left side from matching the right side. So
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay.
So, so what is, Brian, what is your recommendation of what to say out of all that?
just regarding the lower level extension, but that the masonry part of the wall on either side of the window be equal.
So it'd be smaller because one side would get bigger, the masonry would get bigger. So the opening would be smaller, basically, right?
Yes.
So it's to be symmetrical.
The left side would get larger brick width to match the right side, in my opinion.
I agree with Brian on this.
I agree.
One moment. Ready?
And about the windows, you said they were okay if you.
Where do we end up with the top floor windows? Casement?
Yeah, I was saying that because it matches all the other windows type, that I would be okay with casement on it was a third and fourth floor. And they're obviously contemporary at the upper and lowest levels.
Good comment.
Is everyone in accord with that? So we're moving them as submitted.
Sounds like it, yeah, and I understand that. I'm not digging my heels in on that one, because I do think the fact that the punched openings still have integrity is the most important part, so.
And also I really like that he respected what he's calling the gutter line. And so many projects, it gets lost, but it's very, very important to the historic massing of the building. So I give it a check plus on that one, like that.
I agree.
I do, I really do. It's very important. And now with the punched openings, there's a respect.
We're grateful for that. So the upshot is we're approving it apart from the requested symmetry downstairs of the whole application.
Except for what?
Except for what?
The symmetry.
Oh, the
in the rear,
Right.
or lack thereof.
lack of symmetry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should approve it.
Waverly Place.
Hang on
Well,
a
can I just make one comment?
Really, I
And,
see that Brendan's hand is up.
Sorry, Brendan Fitzgerald. Regarding the social effects of this project, reducing housing in the neighborhood, I would like to abstain from voting on this. Is that legitimate?
Which
Even though
building are you abstaining?
this is the Perry Street building, I have no problem with the design, but can I abstain on social aspects of historic preservation on this one?
Okay.
Well, I
Similar to
think
what
that
similar to Albert last week.
And we'll put in the at the beginning, the statement we always use,
Yeah.
that it's a multitude.
it's going to ask you about Chenault. I think we should acknowledge that, not ignore the fact that, housing units are being reduced in the,
That's what I just said, that we have a standard clause we put in as a,
yeah, great. Thanks.
where are we? Okay, the gate.
Oh, unacceptable. I'm sorry. I think, and also I cannot believe that the staff thought that they should approve that very, I don't know. I don't like anything about it, honestly. The spears, the lack of, the fence, the gate, the whole thing is very, I don't understand why the staff approved it, first of all, without a hearing. And I don't understand why the gate has to be, I just don't think it's detailed. Maybe it could work out just fine, but there's not enough information there.
Well, we can comment on the fence, that we feel that it's out of keeping with the building. That's what we're saying.
Well,
And
whatever we say, but I think it should have come before us. That's what I'm saying. I know that they decided they didn't have to, but
we
I
can
don't,
say, we can word it that way.
yeah. And then I think the gate is not fully realized. I don't know anything about it, except it's got a couple of lines up and down and a line across. I want to see, the hardware, the hinges, how it's attached to the historic stoop. It's a lot of gate for a little tiny stoop. And a chain would probably work just fine.
It also looks very disembodied. We have had some that were sort of blended in a strange way with the ironwork. But
Yeah,
the ironwork means there's nothing for it. It looks plopped on. And any
It
gate
looks like the bargain basement. It's really not good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this whole application was very undeveloped. I mean, when we get to the discussion of the excavation, I think that was just so premature to be even weighing in on this before we've even been assured that measures have been taken to ensure the safety of the adjacent properties. I mean, that's fundamental. It seems, the sequencing here seems very odd.
Or premature is a good way to say it. All the engineering, it would be good. I mean, even if we're not here to evaluate the engineering, we would know right away that this is, somebody's really taking careful consideration.
Right. It was a maddening presentation.
And it is very, very different from the fence that has been approved, spikes and all.
Right. Okay. So we're going to complain about that and recommend a denial of the gate as having no design and doesn't work with the masonry. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Also, just before we move to that, I also, can recall several other applications where property owners, due to safety concerns, wished to increase the height of an existing fence, and those have come before us. So I don't understand why this one has not.
I think it's the change in rules.
In use?
rules.
as part of the change in,
Well, I don't think this is a good change.
because, but,
We
and,
should-
well, this proves what we said to begin with, that all these fronts involve so much aesthetic judgment,
Exactly.
and staff shouldn't make aesthetic judgments. They should make rule judgments.
Exactly.
Well, and this railing in particular, it wasn't attractive particularly to begin with. And now it's compounded by just being added on to, instead of maybe doing something original or new with the benefit of the extra height. To me, this is just like, adding a little piece on top of a fence. It's very, very not attractive, shall we say.
Okay. Settled. Let's do everything apart from the underpinning and the wall thing first. Is there anything to say except there's too much excavation?
And too little
it comes
information
down to-
on, I don't know, I think also it's a little, one of those things, a little greedy on the space. Listen, pull back.
Well, I finally got her to say the reason is they want to maximize the space.
It's understandable, it's
Can't
not.
guess that
understand.
losing 3 feet on each side of the
Yeah.
extension is a hardship. In the
Right.
back, it has the proper buffer.
Right, we can't possibly approve maximization of the space when the cost of that might be endangering historic adjacent property.
And I have to say, having done some of these backyards with different heights, the engineering is very complicated. I mean, it looks like you're putting in a skyscraper, you've got so much retaining wall underground. So it's what's happening underneath that we don't see that is going to make or break the project.
And overall, I had no confidence that basically they know what they're doing.
Well,
It seemed to be that drawings were done, but that there was no explanation about how or what the.
it's big. It's sort of like a huge gesture without really considering all the consequences. I mean, we understand why people want it and as big as possible, but it's not, we're a historic district. These buildings are all on rubble and
we frequently have engineering reports, or indeed the engineer coming to be a part of the presentation. Something
Yes.
complicated.
I don't think they're ready. I think they should go back, work a little more on everything and then come back.
I do too. I mean, I think, as I said before, I think this was premature.
It will be interesting to see what Landmarks does with this. And I would like to take 1 second to thank Chenault for digging so deep into this excavation. And it's a
Right.
really scary application.
I went to the gym yesterday, so my shoveling muscles are up.
All right, so we're good. We are denying this outright. Is that correct?
Yes, and requesting that it come back with a more complete,
Yeah,
Presentation.
definitely.
including an engineer's report to say that it's going to work.
Well, or modify the
Not
design
just
based
we'll
on
take
our
care of that
comments would be a really good starting point. I think they should consider our comments from all our experience seeing these applications.
A fully realized presentation and engineering report.
That's it.
Yeah, or just a fully realized presentation that either includes an engineering report that reflects our concern for.
An engineering plan, it should be perhaps.
Yeah, an engineering plan and, you know, and or reduced scope.
Okay,
And or what? And reduce scope, meaning don't go to the wall, to the party walls.
right, less excavation, I think, part of that. And lots of repose.
Even the stairs going down to the basement could have been moved beyond the original wall.
You're right,
They had the hallway
I
there
saw that, you're right.
and ceiling height.
But it's, you know, it's almost like a little careless. It's like if somebody really, really was there, you'd say, oh, maybe I shouldn't cut into this old thing. And, you know, there's a lot of variables to consider.
I really find sort of throughout, it's not a scientific, but it's a subjective. The more we hear the client wants, it's sort of like, I don't have to justify this application because it's out of my hands and the client's hands. And we heard that several times. Rather than talking to the client, reconciling the client's wants with what is correct and doable.
And actually will reduce the budget, by the way. So, I mean, there's a silver lining there.
And I'm not sure what we don't know, having gone to so much trouble to find out what we do know. So I think it's clear.
Yeah.
And everyone's in accord with this one, yes?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, can we take one moment and then do the letter?
Sure, why not?
Sure.
I didn't hear what you said.
Plus, that's all for a hot.
Yeah, well,
What did you say?
Just wants to take a minute and.
Oh, sure.
it's an actually.
Your time. I know, where you go, buddy?
Yeah. It's not as, well, it's not like a big swimming pool like that one on, or was it?
Oh, yeah, I remember that
I
one.
think it's so they could.
No,
Hot.
smaller than that. Right?
And you don't go from a hot tub to a lap pool.
No.
And the little. Well, you have to study, you wanna go visit
Shall
Brian?
we reconvene?
Are you going to discuss Brendan's proposal
Yes.
now?
Yes.
Right now.
Has everyone read the letter?
Yes.
So,
Okay, okay.
May I
Brendan.
just
Read that.
approve whatever the committee decides and say good night, please?
Good night, thank you.
okay, good night, good night.
Good night, Albert. Thank you.
Well, does anyone want to say anything about it? Like, Brendan, why don't you say a few words? Can you do that? Get me in.
I'm sorry, Brendan? Yeah, I'll do it there. I have to scroll.
Bothering you?
Do you want to say anything? It seems self-evident what the letter includes and the
Sure.
rationale from the prior.
Yeah, I mean, the idea generally is to see if we can get assistance from them to chart our way forward. The argument is that this is a very complicated situation. And we need to try to persuade them. I mean, if there's any background about the National Historic Landmarks program separate from the National Register and the 1966 Historic Preservation Act, I'm happy to talk about that. But essentially it's, do we think this is a good way to move forward? Is it worthwhile? And we'd like to do that.
I looked through it and had just a couple editing suggestions. Mainly on clarifying who we are and what we're saying.
Mhm.
We
It's a
are.
little long as
And,
well.
and,
I think.
and the one other thing was to be a little more clear about exactly what we want them to do and what we want to do.
Right,
But
So-
it's all there. It's just a little.
right. You know, at this point, as a first gesture, we might just want to connect with them. Whether we ask for an assessment or not is another, that might be around two. Or, yeah, do we just come straight out and say, yeah, we're worried, we need your help? Or do we want to have a continuing conversation and have them offer it? There's two ways that this has happened in the past. For Savannah, which I sent the documentation about, the GSA was doing a renovation of a post office, and it was really bad. So that triggered this assessment and condition report. Another, a more recent example is in Beaufort, South Carolina, where public citizens sent a letter, and that triggered it. So
And what was that one?
it was basically the same. So in Beaufort, it was threatened by
Beaufort.
development. And they stepped in and started the process.
Well, we are the latter.
Sorry?
We're the latter.
I think we are the latter, but we have to
That
try to
we're the
convince them that
public.
we're, well, but, you know, to the extent that we are authorized to request this is we're kind of in the middle, is my understanding. So in terms of background, when I was working on this during the rezoning, ULURP was in contact with the NPS. In the end, after they submitted their report, based on, you know, the infill studies that I had provided, and basically the MIS information, they said that if an agency were to request, then they would offer their assistance. So this was in October 21. You know, I tried, it just couldn't get anybody to take a stand on that. So that was, yep, private citizen trying to connect, made it to the top, but there just was it didn't get further than that. So I hope that, you know, if the board thinks this is legitimate, that this will open the door wider for a discussion rather than just, you know, a glass blower saying, hey, we got this problem happening. Yeah, I mean, if there's any questions in general, I'm happy to answer
Would
now.
they separately be aware in any way about this?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
Would they be aware of the rezoning necessarily?
Yes, they were, because of my involvement. They did submit a report, but that may be the only involvement.
But not agency wise.
Well, it went to the top of the agency. So I was working with the community outreach person in MPS in the Philadelphia office, and they did compile a report and sent it up the chain. But they determined that there wasn't anything really to comment on. It's also difficult for them not knowing FAR and not really, you know, not digging into the entire DIS. I was not, you know, as eloquent as I maybe could have been. But at least the agency will have, it has come across them. If those players are still there, they will be aware of it. But we
Okay.
still need to elaborate. And that might be a secondary conversation.
Okay, are there some who wishes to speak?
It's a really interesting idea and a very thoughtful letter.
Susan, can you move the mic or speak a little more to it?
Sure, I was saying that I think that Brendan has written a very thoughtful letter and that it's a very interesting idea, that it's a very kind of creative idea to see if we can find a pathway into some sort of support in this way. So I think the question is really, do we want to ask them for something specific? Or do we want to come to them and say, okay, we are Community Board 2 Manhattan. We are on the dawn of a new era here due to this rezoning. This is an issue that our community board has been very involved with over a matter of years, having had a working group study, just a little history of community board involvement in this. And to be specific and say, we are reaching out to you in the hopes that we can start some sort of a productive dialogue that will lead to whatever support you are able and authorized to avail us of. And we would be grateful for this due to our, huge concerns about the future of this very significant historic district.
Yeah. Oh, I like the way that you funneled that paragraph. So
Don't ask me to repeat it.
no, I got it.
Yeah, I'll say it again.
It's all recorded.
Ditto what she said.
So yeah, that's very helpful, Susan, because I was trying to grapple with that. Let's see.
Susan is the power behind the resolution editing.
Excellent. So please, make edits on this, suggest them. Is this, I imagine that this is maybe too long to send. Yeah, so that will be worked out, right? Because it's not.
We're in agreement that we want to be in touch. The question is, can we get a well, this is the plan, that for next month, we have I propose a subcommittee or a working groupette to work on the letter, and then we'll have it at the public session next time, and then at this session, we will come to a formal decision.
Okay.
So the approach and all that will be worked out by this small group, and the entire committee can be consulted and informed as the small group.
Okay.
And also, we must be good about, make sure that this gets calendared for the next meeting so that the public is aware, so that any interested members of the public can appear at that meeting.
Yes, it would appear just as a regular agenda item.
Great.
We have done letters before. This is just much more complicated than we've ever done.
Great.
Okay,
I see that Carter and Susan Kent are both here and would each like to speak. So Carter, I think you had your hand up first, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing, I haven't seen the letter, so it would be helpful if you could summarize the content of the letter. And number two, because there's a working group that was dedicated to the rezoning, you may want to share this with the members of that working group, because they all spent, all of us spent considerable amount of time reviewing all the different aspects of this, and there might be some interesting comments from them. And then I guess third or lastly is just that the full board does not meet in August, and so as a result, this wouldn't be a board position until September. And I'm not sure if that timing has an impact, but I just wanted everybody to be aware of that in case there was an interest to, be moving on certain aspects of this in some earlier time frame. So
Sure. So would you like, I'll summarize the letter?
Or Brandon, maybe can you put it in the chat and then Carter can read it on his own?
The entire letter?
And we have
Yeah, I mean.
very direct access to the chair of the working group.
Yes, Anita knows, I bugged her about this. She probably remembers how hard I pushed on this and got, anyways. So Carter, the National Landmarks Program is separate from the National Historic Register. They evolved separately. The National Historic Landmark Program is an extension of the Historic Sites Act. The difference between the two is there are only 2,500 National Historic Landmarks, and they're selected by the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service combined. And there's other levels of delegation below that. As opposed to the National Register, did I mention there's only 2,500 National Historic Landmarks, whereas there's over 100,000 properties, resources on the National Register. So National Historic Landmarks need to meet a higher criteria of national significance as opposed to regional significance or local significance for the National Register. Also, an NHL, National Historic Landmark, needs to be a really high level of integrity, historic integrity of materials, streetscape, feeling, etc. When it came to Soho in 1977, it was intact. There was not a lot, there was zero development happening. That was one of the important things that that the National Park Service noted in their survey. They actually came just to look at the Hawat building. And when they arrived, they said, wait a second, we want to do a district, which is very rare. It's Manhattan's only district. The other National Historic Landmark district is Brooklyn Heights. So anyways, they have to, so it's a higher level of monitoring, both programs do need to report on threats to their resources. Properties on the National Register need to do a 4-year report to Congress. National Historic Landmark resources 1 year to the president. The extent to which it happens now is not quite as much. As a matter of fact, it's very sketchy on how the extent to that happens. Historic preservation got way bigger than they thought it ever would. So there are examples of the National Park Service coming into the equation when they see that a district is threatened, where they will come in and do a condition report and an assessment, and then actually provide comments and try to mitigate and suggest how to preserve the integrity, but not only the integrity, actual designation. So that's the stick. The stick is that these NHLs, when they lose their integrity, can be removed and lose their designation. The carrot is advice. It's the historic preservation tax cuts. For us, just to have a strategy that we could rely on, and if it's written, then our electeds can also turn to that. So we are ideally, would like to see the NPS involved in how we move forward.
Let's hear from Susan then, and so
Yeah.
we can move on.
I just want to say, Brendan, I think this is an inspired idea.
Thank you.
I think that it is creative and I think we could only benefit from attempting this. We do have that working group, so we, just sort of reactivate it. And, have you participate in that would be terrific. As for timing, it's true, we don't meet in August, but that also gives us time to get things in place. So
Yes.
that when we do meet in September, the board is ready to act.
That sounds perfect. There's no rush on this.
Okay, so we have this window so that we could actually, in the first opportunity, the board could actually take a position. And over time, we may take multiple positions based on what happens.
Exactly. And another thought is with that extra time, we might want to engage the Landmarks Conservancy for their advice. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. They were definitely.
That's common when we have this, again, we've not had one like this, is that we ask others to sign on to it, much as we sign on with something like village preservation or with other community boards on things, that we would seek allies to say, yes, we agree with this once we have something concrete to agree with.
That's a good point, Chanel, because this is the kind of an idea I think people will coalesce around. And you could get some broad support on.
Can we do this? If I could ask Susan to and Anita right off the bat to figure out what to do.
We'll talk about this offline.
Susan, Anita, and Brandon.
Oh, Brendan, of course, yes.
Happy to help.
Why don't we talk about this? We can talk about this offline, put together some sort of an agreed time to meet, to start putting together a game plan. Some sort of projection of what steps to take and everything. That's where you start.
That sounds great.
And then in due course, meaning by the time we need to post the next meeting, if there's something to be done in August at the public meeting, we can do it. And if not, if all the time's going to be taken to do this step, then there just won't be anything in August about it. And
I imagine that's probably the case. But there won't be necessarily anything to do because it's going to take some time.
Yeah, then we can aim for September. Perfect.
Great.
I just had a question.
Carter, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just had a question. I was under the impression from the previous discourse on this that this was also related to 277 Canal and the fact that that there was no action taken on that. And, my concern is just that this moves in such a way that we have this available to further comment on that. Even if the applicant doesn't come back to us, just that we have further comment on this, because this, I think, bolsters some of the concerns that people in the community have and people on the board have. So I just want to make sure that there's some movement on this so that can be included in that, or perhaps I'm mistaken because I didn't hear that mentioned tonight, but I know that was brought up previously.
Yeah, I think that we can decide whether we want to mention that as, okay, well, now that our first development is planned, we are, we're realizing the significance and what we need that we're going to need help. So I think there is an opportunity to address this in a letter to NPS or subsequent conversations. I think that the LPC hearing was extremely interesting in their criticism and approach to this. And the no action, like, this is a moment of like transition, and they understand how serious it is, it seems. So, yeah, I think it certainly is part of the equation, certainly, if we're even, maybe sending backup material, and this may be backup material that has a granted, here's a very decent project that our local preservation groups are generally in support of, but there's still so much to work out.
Do we know, with respect to Canal Street, is a routine no action, or was it to work out the penthouse specifically?
You know what, there were so many interesting comments. And they were disparate. So certainly penthouse was one of them, whether this was a precedent they wanted to set of penthouses. There was also a question of why are we taking a masonry building and putting the fenestration pattern of a cast iron building on top of it? We emphasized the cornice, and there were a lot of discussions happening, and how this relates to the greater social.
So it's a greater thing than just the penthouse then.
Oh, yeah, and then it was like, okay, so we're gonna toss it to work out with staff, and then send us your revision. Yeah.
Any other comments or?
Yeah, just one thing regarding Canal Street and this initiative. I think we do have to be careful because we don't want it to look in any way like we're trying to get them involved in a specific building. I think we have a much larger goal here. And so I think the proper way to contextualize this is simply as an event that prompted our deeper thinking on a matter that the community board has already thought very deeply about, but sort of like that, so that it's an example, but that it doesn't seem like we're doing some sort of manipulative proxy, something way in here or whatever, because I think I don't want to risk losing the larger benefit over one specific thing. So I think while it's good to mention it, I don't think it should in any way overshadow or overrun the larger idea here.
Right. This is not the building that we're especially worried about.
Exactly.
Now, oh, I lost it. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, the group is officially formed, and the feeling is we won't have anything for August, but if something comes up, and maybe we can have a brief discussion of where things are at the business session in August.
Mhm.
Great.
And we'll move on. Is there anything else that we need to consider?
Could you just clarify that? So this is not going to go anywhere and it's not going to be talked about? Or when is this going to be on the agenda next, and where? Because I think it's
going to be decided by the group, by the working group. Well,
why wouldn't it be in the landmarks committee at the next meeting and just invite other people if they want to attend to participate?
Yeah, they'll decide that. They're going to decide that.
Who?
It depends on timing.
Right, but who is going to decide it? And what's the timing? I guess I'm just confused.
The subcommittee is going to decide the timing.
Which subcommittee?
The subcommittee that's going to handle this: Susan, Anita, and Brendan.
Oh, okay. I guess I wasn't sure there was a subcommittee. So seems like we're just making more meetings when this could all be wrapped up. Just if it's brought to the committee.
Well, I guess
they're going to report to the committee when they're ready.
Yeah, my comment, Carter, is that, this is a political action. And I think that it might help us to, think our approach through and how we initiate this. That's my feeling, why we might want to hold off a little bit and really think about this a bit more, or the strategy. Does that make sense?
Not particularly. I mean, I don't even know what's in the letter, but I do know what's important is that we have a catalyst here of a major building. And while nobody wants to address that, even though no action was taken by LPC, that is the catalyst. And even whatever that moves forward there, that is the precedent. And I just sort of not understanding, it sounds like from what's been described here that this is very important, but we do want to move forward on it because all these things take a significant amount of time. And, the content of the letter and the politics of how to handle it are two different things, but it doesn't preclude the work happening on that. And as everybody knows, I mean, it's once September returns, it's September and everything moves forward again. So I guess we have a little bit of time. I'm not so sure the comments are that complicated because from what you've described, the work's been done already. It's just a question of tying it together, improving it, right? I mean, or editing it.
The committee strategize. We understand what you're saying, and they're all here to hear it. So,
well, I came here tonight because this is what was advertised at the last meeting.
That's
that
fine.
This was going to be that it was going to be discussed, and it is of importance to me. So that's why I'm just trying to get some clarification, because this is the time that it gets discussed, and you're just trying to move it along and shut it down. So I just
I'm not trying to shut it down. I'm trying to do it in an orderly way that's been agreed by the committee.
And that's why I asked when it will next be on a meeting agenda.
And I have said twice or three times, it will be on the meeting agenda either next month or the following month, depending on what the committee recommends, the subcommittee.
Maybe we should.
When is that meeting going to be to make that recommendation?
Maybe we should have it on the agenda for next month so we can also get input from everyone. I mean, I don't think the three of us should be deciding it.
That makes sense.
I think we should really have a discussion because it's, there are a lot of layers to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Susan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the meeting of the four of us is really to start to put together some sort of a game plan in terms of organizing the presentation. So that when people hear it, so that we don't just say we're moving forward, we have some sort of a overarching, general framework. And yes, it should be then, because if we can present something that's a little more structured to next month at the meeting and then have people come and discuss it, you usually get a better quality discussion. That's all.
That was the point, that to come with something rather than what does anybody think about the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to articulate what it is we're asking.
Right.
And that's just right up front, some kind of a very simple, clean statement.
And to make sure we're all on the same page. It may be that we're all in general agreement, but we should also be all on the same page. And this is an opportunity for each of us to familiarize ourselves with this, this type of designation to the extent that we're not familiar with it before.
Yes.
We leave it up to you all to let us know how things are and when.
All right.
Are there any other topics come up? I think none have been called.
Nope.
I sent a note around about how to manage new business, and that seems to be a good idea.
Yes,
And above all, to have something, not just a sudden drop of meeting presentation. And this was worked very well.
Okay,
Okay, thank you all.
Mommy doesn't like it.
Hey, good night, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
Brian, be sure to send the 2 paragraphs I asked of you as soon as you can for the
All right.
first meeting.
Okay.
Thanks for
Okay.
your work on
Thank
this.
you
Brenda,
all.
too,
Good
and
night.
thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thanks for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Oh, my goodness, but.